During the late 1950s and early 60s, the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic was the first orchestra in the UK to perform all of Gustav Mahler's symphonies. He was never really accepted by the musical establishment in Vienna during his lifetime, but has come to be regarded as not only a great conductor, but as one of the most important composers of the post-Romantic and early modernist periods. To celebrate the 150th anniversary of Mahler's birth, the Liverpool Phil once again commit themselves to his brilliant, emotional, tormented music as they dedicate the next 2 years to performing the complete orchestral works.
It's one of the most demanding pieces of music for the orchestra in all history.
I think conductors love this music because they can speak something of themselves as well as the music.
He just puts everything into the music and it changes all the time. It's really exciting as a player.
Every time I play one of his symphonies, I marvel at what he's done with it.
A symphony should be like the world. It must embrace everything, said Mahler to the composer Sibelius when they met in 1907. And that famous quote is borne out by the vast universes that his symphonies created. They were bolder, darker, bigger, more epic than anything that had gone before. Mahler didn't come from a privileged background, but from a world that was religiously, ethnically, racially and linguistically highly mixed. He was born Jewish, though not practicing, in a German-speaking enclave of Slavonic Bohemia. He was fond of talking about himself as an exile, and culturally, in many ways, he was.
He fits into the German musical tradition, the German tradition of composition, but he comes as a bit of a shock to that particular system, being neither out and out a follower of Wagner nor a follower of Brahms, the other great master of that previous generation. He has elements of both, but he brings to it something which I think is completely new.
What was new was his adoption of a certain type of popular tone, and urbanised folk music broke through into the world of the symphony, which rendered it much more ambiguous and sometimes ironic.
The whole era of when Mahler was writing these symphonies was a real melting pot in musical life. And he was doing something quite different in these symphonies that had never been done before. He was literally throwing his whole life into his works. I mean, what you hear is almost what he was feeling and had suffered or even enjoyed that day when he was writing.
Anyone who tried to find something new and who moved the art forward always will have a kind of resistance from the obvious critics. So, of course, you will have a lot of resistance when you're trying to do something new, when you're trying to research new ways and find the new possibilities of explaining yourself, and when you're trying to move the art forward.
He certainly had a very distinguished musical education. In spite of the relatively poor background, he worked his way to Vienna, where he was educated by some of the more distinguished teachers there.
He didn't perhaps win the accolades that he hoped for while in Vienna, and as he put it himself, he was condemned to the hell of theatrical life, with the result that you have this diverging career path. You have somebody who aspires to be a great composer but is not taken entirely seriously in that capacity, partly because people think of him primarily as a conductor.
Mahler had, I think, a real problem with his audiences, and in a sense he was quite avant-garde when he had his symphonies performed. So there was a lot of resistance amongst audiences. Of course, there were factions. He had great supporters as well. So the first performances of any of his symphonies were always covered in controversy.
A mixture of furious disapproval and wildest applause is how Mahler described audience reaction after the premiere of his Symphony No. 1 in 1889. His first four symphonies are often classed as his Wunderhorn group as they owed their inspiration to the thematic and emotional links with an anthology of German folk poems entitled Youth's Magic Horn. The first symphony, however, is more precisely linked with his first song cycle, Songs of a Wayfarer, written under the influence of first love and rejection, and is very much concerned with humanity finding harmony within nature.
Well, the first symphony by Mahler has a long history. It's been written about 12 years before it's been actually premiered, as we know it now. Originally, he couldn't decide, is it a symphony or is it a symphonic poem in 5 movements. So it's a story about him growing up as a composer. He'd been, by the time when he started to write the symphony, already he'd been a very famous conductor and very respectable. But he had a lot of criticism under his first opuses. And then, roughly around the time when he started to compose the symphony, was the Songs of Wayfarer. And that's been his first love story. Unfortunately for him, his beloved doesn't feel the same passion as he had. And it's ending with this kind of bitter moment by the end that our life is really not what we thought it might be. While in the first symphony he goes over that and the final is victorious. It's been scandalous because audience has been grow on the symphonies of Beethoven, Brahms, Schubert, and that's been Viennese or German audience in general. And of course they've been not prepared for this kind of romantic, extremely romantic symphony in many ways. I think they've been not prepared for a third movement, which has a lot of parody, which actually, I think, picturized the society of Vienna by that time.
All right, let's do all 12 together, please. 12. 1, 2.
His Symphony No. 2, known as the Resurrection, was written between 1888 and 1894 and first performed in 1895. Apart from the 8th Symphony, this symphony was Mahler's most popular and successful work during his lifetime. It is his first major work that would mark his lifelong view of the beauty of the afterlife and resurrection.
So if in the first symphony he found that the beauty of human is the beauty of nature, and we need to be in harmony with nature, and that's our way to eternity. In the second symphony, right from the beginning, he finding that whatever we try to achieve, there are death which will come to us and which will achieve everyone. Mahler tried to avoid meaning of resurrection as it's by the church. So he tried to go for more broad opinion, for more, I would say, actually more Buddhistic opinion about this circle of life, which he actually will find later in Das Lied von der Erde, the last pieces, and the same about the 9th Symphony. It's a big link between the 2nd and the 9th Symphony. But in the 9th Symphony he goes to eternity, so his spirit peacefully goes into the nuclears, and those little moleculars, they just go into the earth and into the universe. So he finds in 9th the answer that we are the universe and universe are us.
Mahler is certainly an acquired taste for musicians. I absolutely love his music. I think the First Symphony is definitely one of his finest. Also the 7th and the 8th for me are wonderful works.
Not easy to play, both from a technical point of view and from a musical point of view. His music is littered with detail. It's very, very specific about what he wants, and so we have to try and follow all the details as closely as possible.
1. Yep, good, good. Beginning was very good. Now, in the fourth bar, diminuendo starts right in the middle of the bar, please, but not before. Tira.
I really enjoy his music. He's making you play like a fairy tale 1 minute, then a Jewish band, then you've got some sailors drinking song, that sort of thing. It changes all the time. It's really exciting as a player and also very challenging.
First of all, of course, characters and articulation in it. So, and dynamic difference should be much bigger. There are within one bar quite often that we need to make crescendo to forte and then drop down to piano. So more attention to the small details, please. And a second moment, all the tempo changes, most of them, they should be inaudible, the tempo changes, because at the moment we just have one patch and then we have another patch. In all his symphonies, he's very, very often writing in the score that for conductors, please, all the tempo changes, almost invisible or inaudible. Let's try it together, please, strings.
I admire his music enormously. Personally, I think that he is a great composer.
Yeah. Good, good.
Because
good,
I've
good,
played
good.
them a lot and I know them very well as a leader, it's refreshing to find a conductor who will come along and put a new face, if you like.
You have to have something to say with every little bit of the music that you play. He's made it quite clear what he wants it to say in the way that he's marked the expressive comments and dynamic markings, but you have to then find something within yourself that brings that to life, and that's a challenge that I never cease to enjoy trying to rise to, shall we say.
The RLPO is the country's longest surviving professional orchestra, and the Mahler edition is part of a series of concerts going back to the formation of the Liverpool Philharmonic Society back in 1840, formed by a group of local music lovers. The men behind the launch of the Liverpool Philharmonic Society may well have had great aspirations for the organisation from its earliest days. But they started out by running relatively small concerts at a saloon at the back of a dance academy on Great Richmond Street. The Society's leading lights took their roles very seriously, with a set of no fewer than 17 rules being laid out, covering everything from who had responsibility for choosing the repertoire at the concerts through to a detailed system of fines for non-attendance at rehearsals. By 1843, the Society had left behind the saloon and began giving performances in the hall of the Collegiate Institute in Shaw Street. In stark contrast to today's Phil, the Liverpool Philharmonic of the mid and late 19th century existed purely for the pleasure of the moneyed merchant class. 1844 was a significant year in the Society's development. Alongside the arrival of the symphony and the new principal conductor, the Liverpool-based architect John Cunningham was asked to prepare plans for a hall which would be situated on Hope Street. Opened in August 1849, the Liverpool Philharmonic has been an acclaimed and integral part of the city's cultural life. The best in Europe, said Sir Thomas Beecham, the impresario and conductor. Unfortunately, it was destroyed very dramatically by fire in 1933. The present building, the Art Deco Philharmonic Hall, was officially opened in June 1939. 75 years on from the fire, the present hall continues its established reputation as one of the UK's premier arts and entertainment venues.
Well, the building has a very important part in most people's lives who went to school here, because most of the schools have their prize giving here. And so nearly everyone you meet, when you talk about the Phil, they say, oh yes, I remember the Phil. I remember those mosaics on the wall. All the boys remember the mosaics.
There's just so much clarity on stage. You can hear absolutely everybody. And that's quite unusual. I've played in some very famous halls where you struggle to hear some sections of the orchestra. So that just makes our job that much easier.
Vasily Petrenko took up the baton as principal conductor of the Phil in 2006. He's the youngest person in its long and illustrious history to have held the position. In September 2009, he became the Phil's chief conductor. Previous conductors included Sir Charles Halley, Sir Henry Wood, Sir Malcolm Sargent and Sir Charles Groves, who served as principal conductor in the 1950s and 60s and was the first English composer to direct a full cycle of Mahler's symphonies.
No rush!
The 34-year-old Petrenko began his musical education under the Soviet system, completing it after the collapse of communism. He first conducted the Phil in 2004, causing an immediate stir. Soon after the 2006 appointment, he announced his intention of turning the Phil into the greatest orchestra in the world.
We are on our journey to be absolutely perfect. It's a lot of improvements been made, but still be plenty of things going ahead.
The very first chord wins. I'd like to have much more electricity in it, because that's a lightning strike, what he actually even mentioned. So that needs to be zzz all the time, you know, like with a lightning bolt. Can we try? Just the first chord wins.
I think every good conductor is meticulous and demanding, and Vasily is one of those. But he's also got an extra dimension, which is that he's quite easygoing. He doesn't stress his musicians out. He trusts the orchestra, and I think that is an incredible quality.
Now, first, second, fellas, can we play our chords? We start from bar 3. First, second, fellas, please. And 1. Interesting.
He is very fearless. He expects a lot from the player, from each and every one of us. And using such a massive orchestra shows how much he expects the sound, the volume of sound, and he pushes everyone to the very limit.
Very good. Very good. May I listen just first, please? Write your entrance. Sorry. 1, 2. Yeah. Can I ask, can we play much more legato? It's one long slur. Of course, it's not bowing, but we just need to do it, especially when we're crossing a string. At the moment, some of the notes are very different from others.
He's been a big draw. It just shows how one strong personality can really make a difference to an orchestra.
1, 2. Yeah, that's a little bit better. And then also, can we, funny enough, can we play it lighter? Just lighter, please. 1, 2. Yeah, better. Now, with the same tone, but accents fraction more. Accents just fraction more. We'll do it all tutti from after second fermata.
At the moment, the Liverpool Phil could not be better. They've really lit up with Vasily Petrenko. And every concert is a most wonderful occasion.
I think Vasily Petrenko has made a huge difference. I mean, it's always been popular, it's always had a regular audience, but somehow the whole game has been lifted.
He's dynamic, he's got the orchestra playing fantastically, and everything they do is superb now.
The conductors galvanise them, there's a rapport between the conductor and the orchestra, between the conductor and the orchestra and the audience. It's really a thrilling dimension for Liverpool at the moment.
This dimension is set to continue for a good time yet, as Petrenko has committed himself to the Phil until 2015. Before that, there remains the business of completing the programme of Mahler's works, including the magnificent 8th Symphony, the Symphony of 1,000, the most critically lauded piece of work he created. It was the last premiere of his work that Mahler witnessed before his death. He completed 2 further pieces, the orchestral song cycle, Das Lieder von der Erde, and the Symphony No. 9. His astonishing cycle of great symphonies ended with his unfinished 10th Symphony. The Mahler edition will run through until the year 2011 to mark the 100th anniversary of his death. He died in Vienna, aged only 50.
It was a great traumatic event in the history of Viennese culture, because even if he was not widely recognised as a great composer, he had become part of that nexus of artistic figures that make up the complexity of Viennese modernism.
He's one of those composers that has just grown, taken on a life of his own after his death.
Mahler been thinking about the human, about personal, about exact person who suffers in the modern world, who have a lot of good thoughts, who have a lot of bad thoughts, about the person who trying basically to survive in a modern world by the end of the 19th, beginning of 20th century. And I feel the same. Nowadays, it's almost the same question raised. What shall we do in our life? What's going to happen after we will be past? What's going to stay in this planet, in the society, after our life is finished? And how can we make the life of each individual and the entire planet better?
One is very short, if you please. Stop!